of Ukraine heading into a third week now. The U.S. continues to walk a fine line of punishing Russia economically while avoiding any actions that could pull Americans and NATO into direct combat. But despite this cautious approach, the Kremlin has accused the United States of waging economic war following President Biden's announcement that the U.S. would no longer import Russian oil.
So let's bring in Republican Georgia Congressman Austin Scott, who serves on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you for being with us. Last night, the House passing a bipartisan bill banning imports of Russian oil. I'm curious, what do you make of the White House response to this Russian invasion so far? How do you think we're doing? What more could we be doing?
Yeah, that piece of legislation passed overwhelmingly. There was tremendous bipartisan support for it, so I was happy that the president got on board with where Congress was headed. The thing that I would suggest to you is that it should have been done in December when we first had the intel that Russia intended to invade Ukraine. Had we pushed the sanctions through first, back when the intel was made available, then I don't think that the incursion would have been nearly as big as it's been, because it would have hurt Russia's economy sooner rather than later. And that's my chief criticism, is that we should have done this in December.
And Congressman, we just talked about trying to stay out of direct combat with Russia, but no-fly zone has been rejected by the U.S. Also, this idea, this Polish idea of handing over planes to the U.S. who would then transfer them to Ukraine, didn't want to do that either because of staying out of direct combat. Do you think we can avoid that? How much longer? Are you have any concerns that America is going to be pulled into direct conflict?
So I don't think we should be telling Vladimir Putin what we will or what we won't do. I think every time we stand up and we say we won't do this or we won't do that, it just opens up the board for him to do more things. So I would have preferred that if we were going to transfer the jets, that we never talk about it, that we simply did it. And I know you're doing your job in trying to make sure the public knows the truth. But this is one of these things with national security issues where the less that is said, I think the better for getting the Russians out of Ukraine. So I'm sorry that the jets aren't transferring, but I wish that it had just been kept quiet and done.
Congressman, we've talked about the far-reaching impact of this conflict, of this war, this invasion of Ukraine. One of them is the global food supply. Ukraine is in a region known as the breadbasket of the world. You serve as a senior member of the House Agricultural Committee. Give us a sense of what's at stake here and what could possibly happen.
Sure. So Ukraine is responsible for about 50 million metric tons. I want to say that number again so you get the understanding of it. 50 million metric tons of food to the world. They are the largest supplier of the World Food Program. And we're talking about wheat, we're talking about corn. And the majority of the wheat crop is actually exported to Asia and to Africa. So when we talk about low-income and middle-income countries, you're talking about significant increases in the cost of certain basic food groups for those countries. So I've asked the different areas of responsibility to review what a 5% reduction in global food supply means for those areas with regard to political and economic instability. And we have to understand that everything from getting the crops planted, which would be happening over the next few years, has been disrupted, to how you fertilize the crops has been disrupted. If you can get the crops fertilized, they can no longer transit through the Black Sea, so they've got to be transited by rail. One of the other challenges with rail is that the gauges, the size of the tracks in Ukraine, are different from the sizes of the track in the countries that they would have to be shipped through to get it to a port. So there are tremendous logistical problems that are going to increase the cost of getting the crop out of the Ukraine and into the global food supply, even if the Ukrainians are able to get the crop in the ground. So the number one thing that needs to happen right now is the Russians need to get out of Ukraine. And the key issue there is if the Chinese government would stop supporting the Russians right now, we could get them out in time to get the crops planted and get that food supply into the global programs.
Congressman, you just mentioned the logistical challenges that could increase the cost of food, but also we go back to now the increase in the cost of oil, which means Americans are paying more for gas. But that gasoline is needed not just to put in your own vehicle to get you around, but to get our products around. Everything from food to our clothing to our supplies, everything we need, and we're at a 40-year high in inflation already. Question here,
that's right,
sir, how much worse is this going to get? No American is trying to compare any suffering financially to what we see in these pictures, but just how much more would you tell the Americans they should be prepared to endure here?
Well, I think that the issue is how long are we going to have to endure it? if the Russians will get out of the Ukraine, if China will stop supporting the Russians, then I think things get back to some sense of normalcy significantly quicker than they will if this war pushes on for the next several months. If the war pushes on for the next several months, the disruption in the energy supply and the food supply and other things are going to keep inflation higher than we would have expected even under the current environments. So domestic energy production can happen. It should happen. We should never be dependent on our energy or our food supply from other countries. That means that you've got to reverse some of the policies that the new administration has put in. I get it that when you ban Russian oil, prices are going to move. But the price would have moved from $2 to $3 instead of $4 to $5 if the mistakes that were made over the last 12 to 18 months with domestic energy had not been made.
Georgia Congressman Austin Scott, we certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you for being with us on the program.
Thank you.